I realize 100% that I need people that think way differently than me to get shit done. Like, I don't have it all.
Welcome to the follow-up question. I'm your host, Michael Ashford. Come with me on a journey as I explore what it means to find common ground at a time when it feels increasingly harder to do so, to listen more than we speak so that we can understand that our differences don't have to divide us. My aim with this show is to bring you perspectives and ways of looking at issues or topics that perhaps you haven't considered before, so that you can then take that new knowledge and apply it to your ability to empathize with the people around you. I'm a former journalist who believes everyone has a story to tell, and it's only when we ask questions and listen that we truly reveal what connects us as humans. Our dreams, our desires, our experiences, our ideas, and who we truly are. If you're over a certain age, perhaps you remember a time when you were sitting around the dinner table with your family, or you were out at a restaurant with your friends, and someone asked a question. It doesn't matter what the question was, it could have been anything. What caused World War I? How does lightning sometimes jump from one cloud to the next, and other times it strikes the ground? How old is Betty White? Ideas would be tossed about back and forth, guesses would be offered up along with the mashed potatoes, and someone would invariably say, I feel like it's right on the tip of my tongue. Then came the conversation ender of all conversation enders. I guess we'll never know. We would all shrug, resign to the unanswerability of the question, and divert the conversation elsewhere. Of course, this was before we all held supercomputers in our pockets. These days, curiosity takes on a whole new level of importance when every answer to every question is at our fingertips. Curiosity is so crucial because we're so overwhelmed with information that we actually get to choose what we believe to be true and what we believe to be false. Evidence and facts be damned. Without curiosity, we spiral into confirmation bias whirlpools, further entrenching our beliefs with stuff that feels good because it aligns with what we want to be true. And without curiosity, we see those who disagree with us as enemies out to destroy us. My guest here on the follow-up question this week is Nick Laparra, the host of the Let's Give a Damn podcast. Nick envisions a world where there are fewer walls, longer bridges, and bigger tables. And as you'll hear, a churning curiosity within his soul drives this mission, even when, as he admits, it goes into some unhealthy places. I gotta know, how'd you get into investigative journalism? Tell me the backstory there, your time spent as an investigative journalist.
Mainly just being very curious, which has helped me, even in the podcasting space, really cultivating a skill set that helps me ask all kinds of people, all kinds of questions about their story and work. Just a deep sense of curiosity. Not realizing that I don't know most things about most things keeps me just super curious about wanting to find things out, kind of mine information that other people aren't privy to because they don't want to do that work or can't do that work or don't have access to it, and bring those stories to light. So that's it. It's like just a deep curiosity.
Did you spend time at a paper or a news organization, or is this just a mindset that you've taken on as an investigative journalist?
Not in one particular place. I've done projects with various different organizations and stuff. So no one place or paper or media company. I've been a consultant for most of my work life. So I've used that, me having sort of a wide network of people and organizations that I work with to really do, whatever I want to do. Right. Which is, yeah. I see that as a very, it's a gift that life has given me, and it's not always been amazing or profitable, but me having the ability to really do whatever the hell I want to do is like the greatest gift ever.
That curiosity that you just spoke of, where did that come from? Where does your curiosity spring from? Why do you want to know about things and people?
Yeah, there's a few different things going on there. So one is, I was born in New York. My dad came to the United States when he was a kid as an immigrant. He's born in Guatemala, left there during the Civil War, and came here. I guess he's he's an immigrant pseudo refugee because he left because of a war that was happening. And when we were young, so I'm one of 12 kids, and there were 4 or 5 at the time. I'm the second oldest. And when we were all young, the 4 or 5 of us that were born and being raised at that time, my dad decided to move back to Guatemala for an indefinite amount of time. So we just packed up and moved. So as a young kid, I apologize, let me put that on mute there. As a young kid, not knowing Spanish, and really up until that point at 8, 9, 10 years old, not really having traveled much, moved to a completely different country at the tail end of that Civil War. So he left at the beginning of that Civil War when he was a kid, and we moved back and it was still going on. It ended a year or 2 after we arrived. So technically the country was still at war when we moved back. And so I got thrown into a situation where, and I know a lot of expat kids. I know a lot of kids who have left their environment, kids and adults that have left their environment to go live elsewhere. And almost always I see it as a positive thing. I encourage people as much as possible to move, to get out, to see places, even if it's not a permanent move or even a long-term move, get out and explore. But I was thrust into that. I didn't even know I wanted it at the time, but I had to start asking all these questions about the environment I was in, the people around me, these new customs, these new ideas. Again, my dad is Guatemalan, knew Spanish fluently because he is Guatemalan, but never taught that to us, even in those younger years. And so I was thrust into an environment where I didn't know what was going on in any way, like language, culture, anything. We moved into the heart of the city. We lived in a suburb in New York and moved into the heart of Guatemala City, hustle and bustle, just an insane change of pace. So I had to start asking questions. Or I could have, it's kind of funny. If I look at my family makeup, there's a lot of us, 2 parents, 12 kids. There's a distinct difference between the siblings and my one parent, my mom, who bless their hearts, but they didn't ask the questions. They didn't get curious. You can see their personalities today. I love them to death. It's not about like they're inferior or anything. It's just that they lack that curiosity even today because they decided to sort of withdraw from what was going on and kind of in survival mode. And again, I don't blame them for that. But I and a few others of my siblings, you can see our bent toward curiosity and travel and going into the unknown and not worrying about what's going to happen. Back then, we were the ones that kind of dove into learning the language, with our peers, not going to a class, but learning it in the streets, trying all the weird foods, traveling to the other places, not knowing what was going to happen. And so that's where it sort of started. And for me, it never left. I've traveled all over the world. I feel most comfortable when I'm in a place where I don't know what's going on. I hate mundane. I hate being comfortable. I feel most comfortable when I'm in a new place, don't understand what's going on. That to me is like at home because now I get to explore.
How does that then flow into the work that you do now, Nick, with the consulting and the coaching and the work that you do with companies and your podcast, the Let's Give a Damn podcast? How does that experience as a child flow into the work that you do now?
Yeah. I mean, for one, I know that I would not be doing the work I'm doing today were it not for the experiences I had. So I totally recognize and see the connection there because I cultivated being curious early on and also being comfortable in my own skin, no matter the environment I was in. That helped me throughout my younger years, into my teen years, and then into adulthood when I started getting jobs and started getting out there. Even though I spent 15 years in the nonprofit space before venturing out full-time into consulting, I saw markers of that all over the place. Just me not being shy to talk with anyone about anything, me going after certain, if I wanted something, if I wanted to meet someone or do work with someone, just there were really no inhibitors to going out and doing that. There's a running joke in sort of my friend peer group and even my wife's family when I first met them, that I would, because I will talk to anybody about anything, in my 20s, people would always call me. Like if they had a customer service problem, like if like whatever, their phone broke and Verizon wasn't going to give them a new phone or whatever, they would literally call me and ask me to call on their behalf to get it done. Because I can, I just talk to anybody and strike a deal and make it work. And like, how can we work this out? I know you can do more than you're saying you can do, have those conversations. And so all throughout my career, so far in my work, I've seen that sort of, continue to build on itself. And now in this current work, it is giving me the ability to, the podcast is 4 years old. And out of that podcast, just see endless possibilities of what we could do as a result, whether it's I'm writing a book and we're pitching a TV show right now. And, we're launching the nonprofit arm of Let's Give a Damn, and all these different partnerships that I'm building behind the scenes. They all come from seeing a situation and realizing that it could be much more than it currently is. Right? Like, sure, this is fine. This situation can work. This is a great working partnership, or like, let's do this or that or the other together. But I'm always and it hurts sometimes because it gets me into a lot of trouble and it creates so much more work for me. But I see a situation and want to just maximize it, like really milk it for all it's worth and get the most out of whatever I'm doing. So again, it's been mostly good that's come out of that, but it also, I'm a recovering workaholic that just for the last 2 decades, there were times in my work, and I don't look proudly on these times, when I would sleep 4 hours a night because I just there's so much to do and so much to make and create. And I don't, last night, probably once a week this happens. I still do it where I stay up super late, get up super early. And then once a week I crash. That was last night. It was 9 PM. I had been to bed like 1:30 AM the last 4 nights. And then last night I just crashed. So I'm still learning to not let the unhealthy side of this curiosity get the best of me.
That's interesting. I want to come back to the unhealthy side of curiosity. Before I do get into a conversation with Nick about unhealthy curiosity, I want to point out, as you can tell, Nick is a high-spirited guy. He's driven, he has opinions. And through the rest of my conversation with Nick, he and I spent quite a bit of time talking about one topic he's particularly passionate about: the modern state of policing in the United States. Consider this episode, the one you're listening to right now, part 1 of a 2-part series on this topic. It wasn't planned this way, but God works in mysterious ways, you guys. In part 2, next week, you'll hear my conversation with a police officer, Anthony Shefferly. What I hope you hear in both my conversation with Nick and also in next week's conversation with Anthony is just how close the quote-unquote 2 sides actually are. Underneath the emotions of the issue, the language used, the attention-grabbing slogans, I hope you hear what I hear. A lot of nuance and a lot of common ground. Are there differences in areas where their ideas and opinions disagree? Absolutely. But we don't need lockstep consensus to create a better dialogue. We need a way forward. You said you've always seen a situation for what it could be and not what it is right now, or seen greater things for a situation. Nick, what were you seeing that led to the Let's Give a Damn podcast 4 years ago now? What were you seeing and what were you trying to then insert into what you were seeing with the podcast to make it better? Does that question make sense?
Makes total sense. And I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying this. What I found out, what I was seeing is not revolutionary. I don't think all of this was unique to me, right? But I'll tell you what I was seeing in the circles I was running in. This was very much not being talked about. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I spent the first, 14, 15 years of my career in the nonprofit space. I learned so much from it. I got to hold a variety of positions in a variety of different organizations. I love everything I got to do because of my nonprofit work. I got to travel the world and do a lot of good. But I got to this point in 2014, 2015, when I was tired of begging, borrowing, and stealing for everything that we wanted to do. And now in retrospect, and if anybody's listening that was a colleague of mine in those years, please don't hear, I'm not disrespecting those teams or those organizations, but I was a part of some fairly unhealthy teams that weren't functioning very well. And from what I can tell from, hundreds of conversations I've had with nonprofit leaders or former nonprofit workers, that's a thing in the nonprofit world, is because you don't have, enough money, resources, and to help you grow well. Yeah, it's just a shit show half the time, and you're just barely hanging on. So I was coming out of that, and I was thinking, man, I have been, to use the language I use now, I've been giving a damn since I was a kid. Like, I've always wanted to help other people. I can remember when I was quick rabbit trail, when I was 13, when I was 12 or 13, this woman that I knew in Guatemala that's still there today. I mean, I'm 37 now. So we're talking 24 years ago. She had already been there for a decade or two. She's still there today. An amazing woman, Susie. But she invited me. We came across each other living in Guatemala. And she said, hey, one of the things that I do is I serve at this hospital. It's basically hospice for kids that have cancer. So they're dying, and we keep them here and make the most of their last few days, weeks, months. She said, I hang out with these kids, and we play and we read and we go places and we do whatever we can to make their final days, and some of them do end up getting, better. They're still treating them, but most of them, it's their last place they'll be. And so she said, do you want to come with? Do you want to help me? And I said, yes. And so, and for a year or two, I served there. And that was a crash course in loving other people and empathy, because I saw many kids die during my time there. And as a 13-year-old, you're staring death right in the face and seeing that happen. Like, literally, I would show up one day and she would say, so-and-so's not here anymore, right? Like, they died last night or whatever. So all that to say is, like, I, for the longest time since I was a kid, have wanted to help and serve people. So Let's Give a Damn came from me wanting to exit the nonprofit space, but not wanting to stop helping people, and realizing that I wanted to explore what are the 101 ways that people can give a damn. Because it's not just nonprofit, it's not just charity, it's not just NGOs. There are so many ways. There has to be so many ways for people to give a damn, because there's so many different kinds of people in so many different kinds of situations, right? So that was the impetus for the podcast was, 2016. Well, right at the tail end of 2016 was when we launched. So 2017 was really our first year. But I was like, man, I just left with the nonprofit space. I have no money right now. I have a wife and 3 kids. I don't know what I want to do next. So this is a cheap but effective way for me to both learn from these people and then just spread that information, out into the world for whoever wants to hear it. And so that was sort of I hope that answered your question. That was sort of the impetus for the podcast, was like, I'm not saying nonprofit work doesn't work. I'm saying it can't be the only way. And I want to make sure everybody, as many people as possible, know that you could be, you could be rich, you could be poor, you could be influential, or no one knows who you are, or very few people, rather. There's nobody that no one knows who you are, but like very few people know who you are. You could be a boss or an employee. You could be corporate or startup or, work at McDonald's. No matter where you are, you can give a damn. Like, that's the whole idea behind it.
Nick, let's be specific here. What is the void, or what are the voids that your show is helping to fill? Like, why is the message, let's give a damn? And I believe you also refer to it as living an others-focused life. Mm-hmm. What are the voids that are present that require a show like yours?
Great question. Man, there's a lot there. Let me start with the others-focused life. The most successful people in all of history, the people that died with a sense of, I lived a meaningful life, were those, and are those that helping other people is a central part of their lives. There are lots of people that have died with a lot of money, and they have died miserable. They've died with a lot of with kingdoms and with employees and enterprises under their belt, and they've died absolutely miserable. More times than not, people that focus on giving away time and energy and money and resources and skills to help other people, they live and die in a more satisfied, I can live with myself in this life and in the afterlife sort of like, they live that sort of life where it just feels more meaningful. And so the gap that this show fills is reminding everybody of a few things. One is every single person can and should give a damn. Every person. Not to say that every person should start a nonprofit, start a charity, even should spend most of their time, giving X, Y, and Z away to other people, whether it's your time or their energy. Most people can't do that. They've got student loans and, kids and mortgages and just the stresses of life, right? But all of us, every single person, and I can say this because I have spent time in the richest and poorest parts of the world. And the happiest, most fulfilled people I've ever met in my life are, and I don't say this, I mean this. When I say this, I mean this. Like the most happy and satisfied people are people that I've met in the slums in India, in these outskirts towns in India, the people that I've met in the bush of Zambia, Africa. They could not be happier with life, and they have nothing, right? And so I just want to remind people, and there's the key word in all of Let's Give a Damn is not the damn. It's not the part that punches you in the face. It's the let's. It's the let's. I am not interested in doing any of this alone. And that's where we lose a lot of people. That's where we lose momentum and energy and ideas and creativity, is when we go at it alone. I am saying, there's multiple facets to the let's. One is just let's do it together. Like we need to do it together. I'm also saying, and this is the part that gets me in trouble sometimes in a lot of the conversations I have online and on the podcast, is what I'm also saying is I can't do it. So following me online, it would be you'd find out very quickly that I lean left on pretty much every issue. But I realize 100% that I need people that think way differently than me to get shit done. Like I don't have it all. I am very ready to criticize my side of the aisle on the stuff we do poorly, on the ways that we're being hypocritical. And I want to always reach across the political, societal, cultural aisle and say, we need each other to get this done. Like your ideas aren't complete. Your set of ideals and values in life, they're not complete. They mess up in so many ways. And I have a mountain of criticism for people that are staunchly conservative. But I have to maintain those bridges to that side. And those bridges need to be very heavily walked upon, right? And Let's Give a Damn, we talk about fewer walls, longer bridges, bigger tables. Like that's the core. That's the heart of what I want. And I don't always display that well because I'm a type A, Enneagram 8 protector. Like when I see a problem in the world, like I will stop at nothing to go solve that problem, right? Which does make me sometimes come across as like, oh, that asshole that needs to just like chill out every once in a while. But at the core, me working on me every single day and me trying to influence this community that I'm building, that's the core of it. Fewer walls, longer bridges, bigger tables. Like we need each other. Left needs right, right needs left, poor needs rich, rich needs poor. We all need each other to fix really whatever issue we're going after. You name your issue and we can figure out how the best way to get this done is to unite and come together.
Man, that resonates so much with me. This show is all about finding common ground and using questions and this platform to find common ground through the power of asking questions. My question then that flows out of that, and you even kind of brought it up, the Enneagram 8 hard charging style. I'll broaden it out here a little bit. Do we have, for these really important, big, hairy issues that our society is facing right now, do we have a marketing problem? And by that, I mean, I'll use two examples from the right and the left, and I am neither. I'm staunchly in the gray middle. I'll give you two examples. Defund or abolish the police and make America great, or F your feelings. Do we have a marketing problem in that we go so far to the emotional with our message, even though the underlying issue and common ground that needs to be there, does that get lost when we go so far to the emotional extremes in our messaging?
The answer is, I think there's a both and answer there. So the answer is yes, we clearly have a marketing problem. Humans in general are very, very, very bad at both and, right? We want either or all day long, right? Yeah. So like you said, most people would land in those, whether, there's the Make America Great Again crowd. And then there's the like way over, extreme on the other side of the aisle, right? And we find it very hard to find that common ground. Where can we dance a little bit, right? And figure out what the solutions are. Now, I will say that I also think, how do I say this? I think there are issues in society that do require heavy language and pretty substantial moves. So I would love, let me throw one out and see where you, as someone who does land in the middle, what you think about this. So you mentioned the, abolish the police example. I land in the abolish the police example.
I know you do.
Not because first of all, one of the most misunderstood parts of that whole argument is that we're advocating for mayhem and disaster and, there's no oversight whatsoever. That's not it at all. Part of what attracts me to abolish the police is the kind of very punch you in your face language. I just had a conversation with a friend last night who would literally probably land in the same camp as you in terms of is very staunchly in the middle, wants to find those common ground things, as do I. But, for the sake of the conversation, we were talking and he's like, please explain this whole abolish the police thing to me, because, obviously we can't get rid of this is what he said. The police are never going away. And I said, well, that's exactly why there's so much contention around this. Is we have now hundreds of years into this idea of policing, we have seen that they now rule and we can never get rid of them. And that's just not true. It's true because we say it's true, but it's not actually in reality true. The system, in my view, if I have a tree in my yard that is rotten, it's termite, whatever, it's rotten, you can't revive that tree. There's one solution for that tree. Well, first one is just wait till it falls down and maybe hurts, your dog or your kid or whatever, or your car, or we chop it down and plant a new tree. That's how I see the problem, not the people in it. I have friends that are cops, love them. I think I'm so glad they're there to remind me that it's not about the people that are in the organization, but the organization was founded on these principles, these governing principles that have turned it into the organization it is today. That if you can't trust the person with the law and the gun, how do you? And I say this as yes, I'm a son of an immigrant, but I am white. I'm pretty pale, so I don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about it. But my friends, a lot of our friends, have to worry about going to the grocery store or school or having air fresheners or, reaching for the wallet that the cop told us to and then getting shot for it. So all that to say is I land in the abolish the police camp, which you said you already know, that's clear. But I also want to I don't land so staunchly in it that I refuse to have conversations with people that think differently than me. And that's the key. Yes, I think we need to figure out how to find more common ground on more issues. But even when I feel so staunchly, I have read the books, I have, read the data, I'm more convinced than ever that there is zero possibility, 0.0% of reforming this institution. I think we deserve better. Dante Wright deserves better. Breonna Taylor deserves better. We all deserve better. Even though I land in that camp, I want to have all the conversations with even the more moderate defund or reform police, all the way to the people that are saying, no, that's impossible. The police will never go away. When we lose that dialogue, that's when it becomes, that's when we devolve into what we're doing now, right? Like the last 4 or 5 years politically have been just so, our mental health took a huge hit. And now I think regardless of what you feel about the current administration, it's not that. Let's not make this political. I'm saying we can now breathe a little bit and begin to have these conversations again, because everything just feels a little more like not as intense and not as polarized as even just like 3-4 months ago. So is that helpful? I don't know.
I think so. My question out of that then becomes, and to get back to the marketing problem, the language used, does that cut us off from having those conversations? Because the entire 5-minute explanation you just got there of behind the abolish the police movement, does it get lost? Do we lose the ability to hear what you just said when our words are so divisive in the marketing of those ideas? You asked me where I stood. I am the husband of a social worker. She's been an advocate for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault, and she's worked in community mental health. I'm 100% for changing law enforcement's response to a lot of issues.
Yes.
Sending social health workers into instances and not always sending somebody immediately with a gun. Right? But those conversations and that from her experience and her dealing with law enforcement, her dealing with the mental health side of things, her seeing the justice system at work from behind the scenes, that has informed a lot of my opinions and approach there. I used to be on the other side. I grew up in the Midwest in Kansas. I was a conservative. I was from a red state. I always voted with the people who were an R next to their name. And I could see, and even people in my family, I understand the language that we use to initially promote the idea and the discussion that we're just having right now immediately shuts down the discussion that we're having right now. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And I agree with you. So let me just say this. I've said this to several of my mentors. I've said this on the podcast before. I know that the Let's Give a Damn movement in community would be much bigger than it is right now. And when I say much bigger, I think a lot bigger.
Yeah.
If I was better at this. So I recognize where I fall short. There are several people that I look up to so much I know they feel the same way I do about this. And they get so much more done. Now, so another facet of this conversation is, so I think about James Baldwin, one of my just heroes. James has this great quote where he says, we can disagree, still love each other, unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist. So right. And again, I'm not comparing myself to what a gay black man had to go through in the 40s, 50s, 60s in America. Not saying that, right. Not comparing myself at all.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is what I'm still working through and what I want to continue working through is, are there issues because they are actively hurting people? So these conversations where we choose our language very carefully and have these slow conversations, I don't know the data. Do we actually get more done in the long run? I think so. I think you're right. I mean, I think I know that you're right. But I also know there's a place, and I don't know what place these people that use the strong language, the kind of bombastic language, the stuff that hits you in the face. I don't want people to stop saying abolish or defund the police, because I know that every single day that they continue to lead in the way that they're doing, more people are being hurt. More people that don't have cell phone cameras running are being pulled over, are being arrested. There are hundreds of thousands of people right now sitting in jail cells because they cannot pay a few $100s in bail. That is evil. That's immoral. And the longer we take to have this conversation in a more measured, civilized way, so I guess the question I want to get to is is there room for both? Should the majority of people be figuring out how to have these conversations in a more measured way? And should there still be some people that, I look at the example of, like Dr. King and Malcolm X, right? They took two totally different approaches. Both are really valid. Both are seen very differently in the eyes of history, but both are people that are still admired and their works are followed. And I think they were both effective, and they both took two different approaches. So, we just talked about James Baldwin. So same idea there. So I don't know. We do have a marketing problem, and I know I'm part of the problem, and I know myself enough to admit that.
Yeah. I think the James Baldwin quote is entirely appropriate. Yeah, absolutely. That language when there is oppression, when there is a degradation of someone's humanity, that strong language is needed. So I, again, agreed with you there for sure, Nick. When you say abolish the police, what do you actually mean by that? What does that look like to you, to abolish the police?
Great question. It's obviously a very big statement. It's very bold. And for most of us that grew up in, kind of a normal household in a normal neighborhood, if that's you listening, we've had a lot of good experiences with police, and we kind of think of them, more in a sort of an Andy Griffith, they're taking care of us, drive by the house kind of way. So what I mean is that our police, in the one of the interesting things about that statement is I'm not even blaming police for so much of what they've been tasked to do. We have failed. Everybody involved has failed. We have tasked police with taking care of things that they were never trained to do. Therefore, they're put in situations that sometimes are impossible to figure out. And, bad decisions are made all the time. These are the things that we're seeing on, on video cameras and stuff. Not on video cameras, but on cell phone cameras. So what I mean is that we need to, several hundred years ago, when the police were established, they were established as slave catchers. That was the first police that we know of. The sheriff badge, the star, literally the first one of those said some version of slave catcher. They would catch slaves that were running away from their masters. So the very first go at having a police was to catch slaves. So that institution started off on a bad foot, right? And it's grown into what it is today. And so what I mean is that I'm getting there. This is a big thing, and I want to be very careful because I do understand that it's different than reforming the police and defunding the police. I envision a society where we can have people, whether they're called police or not, people that are taking care of the extreme cases, the things that are happening that require maybe more authority, more force, maybe a weapon, right? But I would say 80 to 90% of what our police do, think about it. We have the same people stop someone for going 6 miles an hour over, or maybe there's a cat up in a tree. We have those same people also go and stop people from killing each other, or what could be perceived when they show up as someone trying to kill someone else. That no other job has that sort of range. And so we've put them in an impossible situation. So by abolishing the police, we use all that money, because there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars tied up in the police, system here in America. We can empower so many other organizations and whether it's counselors, therapists, people that stage interventions in relationships. There are so many other people that can prevent things from getting to the place where a police officer is needed. And again, I do think that because America is also in this predicament where we love our guns. I am a hippy dippy pacifist that does not own guns, and I don't think ever will. And I understand some reasons for, owning a gun. I completely understand that. I don't want to do that. But there are more guns than people in this country, right? And there are people that are pushing for that. And it seems like something that will never go away. We might be able to, ban certain kinds of weapons, but that's here to stay. It's part of what America has become, for better or for worse. So we do need some sort of an agency, people that when the time comes and if the need arises, they come in and help stop things from escalating. But there are so many other things that can be done in the meantime that they're not equipped to do, and they should not be doing, that they end up doing. And so my wish is that there's actually a great book, The End of Policing by Alex Vitale. He is a professor in Brooklyn, New York. This is one of the more prominent books that come up when we're talking about, okay, what does it actually mean? You can't abolish the police. That's insane. That book, The End of Policing, does a deep dive into what it would actually look like to do that. And Alex is much smarter and more versed than me on this topic. But I just envision a world where people of color, and really anybody, because it's not just isolated to people of color, but they do get the brunt of, some of the abuses that we're seeing nowadays. I envision a time where we can live more freely and not have to almost every single, again, last week with the Derek Chauvin, verdict, the conviction, that same day, again, whether it was right or not, literally at the same time that was happening in Columbus, Ohio, this young woman, was shot 4 times, 6 seconds after the police officer arrived. Again, I'm not getting into the specifics of that, but it's happening too much. And I don't think it has to be this way. You look at other countries. This is something that I always ask people. If I'm droning on, please tell me to shut up.
Keep going.
This is something that I talk about with people when they say it's not possible. I always ask them, so do you think that Americans are just more evil than people in other countries? Because there are other developed in countries where the police don't even carry weapons. Like in the UK, if they want a firearm, they carry, I think it's like a taser and a baton, something like that. And if they need a weapon for something, they have to call back to the station for it to come out. You can find these videos online of police officers in other countries, crazy guy with a machete trying to kill the officers. 20 officers show up without weapons, and they end up disarming him. They end up taking him over without killing him. Right here, if somebody's wielding a machete, he's gone. And I think it's problematic that most Americans think, well, that was the right decision. Look what he was trying to do. He's trying to kill somebody. And I'm like, that is not. We need to wait till the very last second, the very last moment to take a life, because that life cannot come back. We simultaneously say that we value life so much, left and right, in different ways, right? We value life so much, but yet we take it so easily, and it's not even a thought that, like, I mean, if you look at Micaiah Bryant in Columbus, Ohio, same day as the Derek Chauvin murder, like, we don't even know the details yet, but we do know she was calling for help. We do know she was a kid in the foster the system. We do know that there were adults. She was wielding the knife against adults. So what do we know about that situation? Like, was she in danger? We don't know anything, and she can no longer give her side of the story, right? So this is tragic. And whether it ends up being reforming, defunding, or abolishing the police, my hope is that we just get to a place where people can feel safe again. Because if you can't trust the police officer who has deadly weapons and the law on their side, whatever they say you have to do, you have to do. If you can't trust them, who can you trust? That's, I always fall back on that. I'm like, those are one of the few kinds of people in this country that you have to be able to trust all the time, because they have the power to give you life or let you live or take your life. That's it, man. I know that was like a roundabout way. That's first thing in the morning, but that's what I wish for. That's what I mean by abolishing the police, is that we can give so much of what they do away to other people that are more equipped to take care of it. And then we still have this core of people, again, however we handle the weaponry side of it and force and training and all that stuff. It just looks different. So abolishing the police doesn't mean, running free in the streets. It means that we change the way this looks so that they actually are servants of the people. And I don't have to walk around, well, for one, angry at them. I'm kind of passively whenever a cop, because of what's happening, I'm not angry at that person. When that cop passes by, I'm not angry at them. I don't know them from anybody. I'm angry at the system. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to trust that they have my best interest in mind. And I still do this thing. If I ever pass a black or brown person that is being pulled over by police, I still to this day pull over, get out, and start filming. Every single time. And that's tragic that I have to do that just in case something happens, So I'm just imagining a world where that doesn't happen anymore.
Again, a nuanced answer, right? To, the headline of abolish the police. There's a lot of nuance under that from your answer. Last question on this topic that I want to be really pointed at. The extreme or the often the answer to that or the rebuttal to that, to the abolish the police banner is good luck. If you do that, good luck when, somebody breaks into your house in the middle of the night. Who you gonna call? That's not what you're advocating for. Am I correct in saying that? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's not what you're advocating for. And you just kind of said it at the end, but I want to be very clear. You don't mean police go away. There are no more police officers with guns. Am I correct?
You are correct, but I think you are correct. There is some sort of a system where there is still, again, because we live in America, we don't live in Australia where, what was it, 20, 25 years ago when there was that mass shooting, they banned, assault weapons and it's so hard to get a gun. We don't live there.
Yeah.
I wish we were more like that because I don't like our obsession with guns. I don't like it. I don't understand it even remotely. So we live here. So yes, I believe that I can call for the abolition of the police, which is what I'm saying by that is the current system that was birthed in catching slaves when they were running away. That system needs to be abolished. And whatever grows up in its place needs to be a system that truly values life and truly thinks twice and thrice about what's sort of happening before these kind of like these quick executions that we're seeing, regardless of whether the person deserves it or not. Oh, look, they had priors. They were a drug addict. They were this. None of that means that someone should be killed for having a fake 20 or this or that. There's so much that has to happen before we get to that place where we take a life, something that can never, ever come back. So yes, it's very nuanced. I'm not trying to push anything. I've had Alex on my show, but I don't know him. I'm not getting anything from this, but I do recommend the book for someone that wants a very mature, not knee-jerk reaction case for what would society actually look like if we abolish the police, the end of policing, Alex Vitale. And there has to be nuance here. There have been times where I'm just like, where there is no grace or nuance in the conversation. And I'm so angry at what's happening. Like this should not be happening. But when I have a chance to like sit back, they're like anything else in life, there has to be nuance and we have to answer those questions. We do live in a country of 350 million people. There are 400 and something million guns in this country. So we can't get rid of the good guys, quote unquote, the good guys that have the guns. But what does that look like? It has to be people centered. It has to be human centered and not power hungry and ego, hungry. So
I want to go back and maybe let that part of the conversation sit for a little bit. I want to go back to something you were talking earlier. You mentioned the people that you have met who were living the happiest lives were living in that selfless service state to others, those living for others. It seemed like you maybe had somebody in mind, like as you were saying those words, that you were thinking of someone specific. maybe in that town or those towns in India. Did someone actually run through your mind as you were saying those words of somebody living out that life?
Well, I mean, lots of people. I was actually thinking of Susie, the woman I mentioned in Guatemala.
Okay.
Who is now 40 years into her career, quote unquote career, of helping people and loving people in just a very selfless way. And I get her letters still each month where she updates her like supporters. And every month, she's now 60 something, every month, just joy over the smallest wins. That to me is truly remarkable and truly incredible. Now, I know there are nuances to this conversation. Like there are poor people that are miserable and there are rich people that are miserable and there are poor people that are happy and rich people that are happy. So obviously this is a much bigger discussion. I'm not talking about the economic side of it as much as I am people that I know. And I could go back a lot of the conversations I've had on the podcast. Yes, people that I have met, in Zambia, in India, in Jamaica, in Moldova, in these places that they don't have a lot. And I've never met happier people. Like there's something there that I want to tap into personally, even as I continue to build things that are making money. I'm not in that same place financially as they are, but I can keep that same integrity, that same humility about life. So to answer your question, Susie, and I won't say her last name because she's very like private about who she is. And I love that. Again, I love that about her. She should be famous. I want everybody to know about Susie. I asked to include her in the book that I'm writing. And she was like, you can, as long as you never say my name. Like, I don't want my name out there. And I'm like, God, that's so amazing that you, this isn't some false humility bullshit. Like, this is you truly like, no, I want to fly under the radar until the day that I die, just giving myself away to these people here. That's incredible.
Nick, how do we get more people to not just understand that? Because I think everybody understands that, but actually do something about it in their own lives. Like, how do we use the example of a Susie or somebody else from our lives who we know lives that selfless life and actually model that same behavior? Why is that so hard for us to model ourselves?
Because it takes work. It takes work. This doesn't come naturally. Our natural human state, not to say that naturally we wouldn't do any good in the world. That's not what I'm saying. But naturally, as we grow up and, take on more responsibility and we have, spouses and partners and kids and job and career, life happens and we become tired and worn out mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all the leaves. We're just worn the hell out. And carving out space, whether that's 1% or 50% of our time, to figure out how we're going to make the world a better place, leave the planet better than we found it, it takes work. Not only like physical time, we have to carve that out, but to become damn givers that truly have a lasting effect, we need to educate ourselves, in many cases, re-educate ourselves. I have a lot of, when I first started this thing and all throughout, but literally from the first month I started this thing, I had parents coming to me and saying, Nick, this is great, but you got to do something for the kids. You got to do something for the kids because, and I've seen that become true. I spend like my full-time job for the most part in a variety of ways right now is to help adults unlearn a bunch of shit they learned when they were growing up that we could have avoided had parents been more attuned and put the right people, places, and things around them. I'm trying to avoid that with my kids, right? So I totally understood that feedback, and I've been trying to figure out how to do that. Obviously, a lot of my platform would not fit for kids for obvious reasons, but yeah, it takes work. So it's not just learning new ways of thinking, but also just relearning. Like that's hard work, Michael, like unlearning a bunch of things that we are so stuck in our ways now believing. That's double the work than just learning something afresh. And so I that's why I believe the let's is so important. We have to find comrades. We have to find allies. We have to find people that can do it with us, because alone we will very easily, very quickly go back into our old ways. And the beauty of this is that even though I just said this is hard work and it's learning and unlearning and there's education, you got to read books and you got to, do all these things to prepare yourself to be a damn giver. At the same time, there are 1,000,001 different ways to do this. So I'm not asking people even to become somebody that they aren't or never will be. I'm not asking you to become somebody that you're not. I'm saying, like, really and this is work too, go to your therapist, have a really solid network of people around you so you can figure out who you are and how you can best contribute to the world. And that could be starting a company that it's such a great idea, and you're such a really badass business person that you could make so much money and give most of that away. Or maybe that's not you at all, and you need to start volunteering at your soup kitchen or, at the local food bank or whatever. And there's 1,000,000 different ways in between there. So on the one hand, it is a ton of work. On the other hand, it's not a ton of work at all. And there's the last thing I'll say. One of the frameworks that I use is helping people realize that they need to, there's 3 levels of giving a damn. One is giving a damn about yourself, then each other, and then others. And here's what I mean by that. If you try to jump to the last one, the others, the big ask, the big going out into the world and trying to have an impact, but you haven't done the first two, you haven't done the first one, which is give a damn about yourself, you're not healthy physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You should go to therapy and you're not. You should be resting more and you're not. You have unhealthy relationships in your life and you're not off board, getting rid of those. If you haven't done that hard work, then you will burn out on number 2 and 3. And number 2 is each other. That is the people in your immediate vicinity that you're going to pour into them and they're going to pour into you, right? These are your coworkers, your partner, your kids, your neighbors, the people you're building stuff with. All those people, you're going to pour into them and they're going to pour into you. It's a very reciprocal relationship. So there's more health. So now you've done the work of taking care of yourself. You jumped into number 2. You're now taking care of each other. Once that support system is solid, then you can jump out into helping people that probably will never give a shit about the help that you're giving them, right? Like, you're not going to, if I'm building this big nonprofit that's going to build wells in whatever, or I'm building a company that's going to give away $1 million a year, you'll never see you'll rarely rather see the final fruit of your labor. So you're not going to get those people saying, thank you so much for all you've done. So if you're not healthy, that's going to ultimately burn you out. But if you go into into that work, knowing that you're doing this because it's the right thing to do, and who cares if anybody ever thanks you for it or not? I mean, satisfied life. Like that's the satisfied life. That is the healthy life. If you do it in that progression and then continue, I mean, it's a back and forth. You got to continue making sure all that's healthy, but it has to be done in that order. So that, your initial question, like, how do we do this? Why aren't more people doing it? I think it's that. It's because we feel like it's such a big task that we just kind of burn out and we don't know what to do. And then we don't have that support system around us that like pull us up and say, no, you can do it. We'll help you. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. What have you learned as your show has grown from infancy back a few years back to now? You've interviewed people at the top of their game, some of the biggest names that are kind of in popular culture or in our society right now. What have you learned the most, Nick?
Do we have 3 hours? We don't. I hope this doesn't sound repetitive, but if there's anything I've learned, it is that I was very leery. I was very hesitant to start interviewing as the show grew. And as, it went from me asking people to be on the show to now my inbox getting multiple requests a week to be on the show. And I just don't have enough time to make that many shows, right? Maybe someday I'll have a daily, Howard Stern type show, but not right now. I got too much going on. But one thing I've learned, and again, not to be repetitive, is that we all truly need each other. Like I was very hesitant, like, oh man, I don't want to interview. I honestly didn't want to interview all the famous people, all the well-known people, because part of me was thinking, you better do something with what you have. Like life has handed you. I mean, you play characters on TV and they pay millions of dollars to do so. You better be figuring out the most strategic ways to give back and to help out. But that's just cynical. And I have to realize that those people, most of those people, yeah, they worked hard to get it, but everybody's working hard. Like life was kind to them and they got lucky. And that doesn't take away from the important work that they're doing as a well-known figure in pop culture, et cetera. Like, so just learning. And then the other way around, like I admire so much the people that'll never get the applause, never get the acclaim, and are still doing the work. But again, the same, the opposite end of the spectrum from the very famous people, they don't have to be doing it either. Like they have so many problems. They have so many things to work through, and they're still figuring out ways to do it. And so the biggest lesson I've learned 190 odd episodes in is that we truly, I don't say this in a cliched way, we truly need each other. The only way, whatever the solution is to abolish the police, defund them or reform them or whatever the answer is there, we need each other to do it.
Yeah.
The left can't do it alone. The right can't do it alone.
Yeah.
If we're trying to end world hunger, if we're trying to close the wage gap, if we're trying to actually heal our criminal legal system, it's not a criminal justice system. There's very little justice in it. But if we want to heal that, if we want to fix the fact that people are going to prison today for smoking weed, something that I can do on a regular basis and will never have to worry about getting arrested for it, right? Like if we want to figure that out, we need left and right and everybody in between. And so I hope a little bit closer to becoming that balanced, measured person that even though I do come on heavy in these conversations, that people will want to say, oh yeah, we know how Nick is, but the dude is reasonable. And the dude wants to learn from the other side. And he wants to come up with a solution, a true bipartisan, cultural, societal, political solution for fixing whatever the problem is. I truly believe that we need to focus on that. And I am working on myself each and every day to figure out how because I don't want to not be me. I'm a wild and crazy guy. I've visited the craziest places. I've eaten the craziest things. I've done the craziest things. I don't want to change anything about that. How does he fit into this ecosystem that he's trying to build, where we can build fewer walls, longer bridges, bigger tables? We can have these conversations and come to true, actionable end points, it's true actionable solutions for these huge problems that we're facing in society. We could talk for hours about what I've learned. I mean, it's just been and you're learning this, being dozens of episodes in at this point, people are fascinating. Mm-hmm. Like I want from sun up till sundown. That's all I want to do is talk to people. Mm-hmm. That's really, somebody asked me a couple of years ago, what's your ultimate goal? And I said, the ultimate goal is that I never have to look at a computer again. I can just walk around my cell phone. That's all the computer I need. I just want to talk to people from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. I just want to talk and learn because people are so amazing. And together, if we can figure out how to align, our desires for life, then we can, I don't know if you're spiritual or not. Yes. But I'm a Christian, a very reluctant one these days, admittedly, because of all the stuff that's been going on. But I also I admire leaders of other spiritual backgrounds and religions, and one of my favorite teachers is Ram Dass. And Ram Dass has this incredible line that literally haunts me every single day, haunts my work. I mean, I can't not think about his line. We're all just walking each other home. We're all just walking each other home. And when he says all, he means all. I'm an anti-war, hippy-dippy, pacifist. That means me figuring out how to walk home with someone who is a a war buff and like thinks that we need a more robust military, even though we spend more than the next 15 countries combined on our military. Like, yeah, I can spend all day shitting on that guy and just telling him how terrible he is for wanting to go to war and to be, always be on defense and on whatever. Or I can say, bro, like, we're all just walking each other home. Like, how can we work together to get to X, Y, and Z? So
I call it the third way, man. It's not the left way. It's not the right way. It's the third way that we've all got to be in agreement there. So you made the statement earlier, the unhealthy side of curiosity. What is it?
Well, the unhealthy side of curiosity is, there's a few different things I'm thinking about when I say that. One is, and I've already talked about it a bit, is kind of working myself into a situation where I just work and think and act all the time. Like I take my advice very loosely on the number one, what I said earlier, like give a damn about myself.
About yourself.
I've known for years that I need to go to therapy. I have so much stuff I have to work on from my younger years, and just a lot of, abuse and different things that I have yet to like really work out and talk out. So what have I done in the place of taking care of that? I've just worked tirelessly for 20 years to figure stuff out. So the unhealthy part of somebody that's curious is like not knowing when to shut it off. I mean, I will tell you, when my head lays down at night, I will, close and I fall asleep within 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes, cause I'm so tired, it's usually like way too late, but those 5 minutes before I fall asleep, all of a sudden my brain will start going, and if I don't roll over and open my notes app real quickly and write down a few words and then roll back over. Okay, now it's on paper or it's on my phone. Now I can go to sleep. 30 seconds later, boom, another thing. So literally every single night, 5 to 10 times before I actually fall asleep, and I fall asleep faster than almost anyone I know, I still have to like get those off my plate or else I'll never fall asleep. And so that's the one thing that I'm thinking about. The other thing is, one of the downsides of being endlessly curious is never actually coming to know what I believe about something. If I'm endlessly curious, that means that I'm going to have a hard time ever on anything, on any issue, spiritual, societal, cultural, political. I'll never be able to like, and on the one hand, I'm fine with that. I think we should be teachable and we should be moldable, right? But there are some things that if we don't actually know deep down in our soul, like in our heart, yeah, like I've seen myself shift all over the place in a variety of ways, because I am just curious about like, well, what if I'm wrong here? What if I don't have it right? I should explore this other issue. I should explore this other way of thinking about it. So the good side of that is, yeah, I mean, I've read a ton of books and listened to a lot of teachers and leaders, and I've explored a lot of issues and had thousands of conversations. The downside is, Nick, what do you believe? Right? Like, what do you actually believe about this issue or this worldview or this idea? Like, do you actually, because I've quoted James Baldwin, going back to him. He always said, like, because people always criticize him, because he went off to France for years and then went off and then to Switzerland for a while. Like, people are always like, well, you don't have the right to criticize America because you don't live here. First of all, he left because he had to. He said, if I don't leave here, I'm going to murder someone. Because he was being so attacked and there were so many hateful things being done to him. He's like, I'm going to end up killing someone. So he left for France, right? And he said, no, you don't get it. Like, I love America so much that I reserve the right to criticize her perpetually, right? So that's one of my biggest battles inside of me, in my mind, is, Nick, do you hate America? You're always criticizing her. Should you just go somewhere else? Not hate America, but like, do you dislike America that much that you should just leave? Or are you in the James Baldwin camp of, no, you actually believe in the American dream more than most of Americans, so much so that you're going to criticize the things that are wrong and not just kind of like empty threats. You're going to actually do something about it. But that also comes with the curiosity, right? Like, where it's like, I don't know if I vehemently dislike America or if I love her more than most Americans. I don't know. because I can't like figure out which camp I land in. So that's those are a couple ways that I think about when I talk about the unhealthy side of curiosity. It could go many different ways, but there's a little bit.
Makes sense. Nick, I know we're coming up on the end of our time here, and I wish we had 3 hours so we could keep talking about this and talking about these issues, man.
We'll do a round 2 someday.
I'm all for it. I want to get in the last question that I ask all my guests, though, and that is, what's a question that you wish you were asked more?
Oh, good question. That is a really good question. What do I wish I was asked more? I have a very, very quick context. I know you're asking for an actual question, and I'll give some context to the question real quickly.
Let's hear the story first.
I have a lot of people that dislike the work that I do. A lot of them are, most of them are in the conservative camp. And I wouldn't even put that on conservatives. I know so many amazing conservatives. I'd say they're, unhealthy rule following fundamentalists that have a lot of racism and xenophobia in their lives. A lot of them are people that I grew up with that like have seen what I've evolved into and literally hate. I mean, they have trolled me online. They've started Instagram accounts just to like, quote unquote, expose me. And like, they've said things about my family and my kids. And I wish people would ask me, now that you're not in this heated debate or this conversation on, your podcast or whatever, what do you really think about X, Y, Z? Like, let's have a disarmed, level-headed, let's have a couple drinks. Let's smoke a little bit of weed. Let's do something to like calm down and bring the tension down. What do you really think about this X, Y, or Z issue? Because I know that I have 2 types of conversations. One is the very heated conversation on a podcast or whatever. And then there's the Nick. I mean, this really is a good, like, kind of encapsulation of our conversation. Like, Nick, like there is give your third way answer. Like, I know you want to say, abolish the police. And I know you want to say, cancel this and do that. But like, how do we actually get this done? So a lot of people assume they know what I think about X, Y, and Z because of how strong I come across, which causes people to create like stupid troll accounts and stuff to like talk about me and my family. But I wish that person, there's one account right now that's like so many posts in and it's just ridiculous the stuff they post. I wish that person would come to me and say, Nick, what do you let's talk about this. What do you really think about this issue? Like, can we come to some agreement on this? That I wish people would ask more instead of assuming they know, assuming I'm just a mindless bleeding heart liberal that is just going to do whatever the left says. Like, that's not my intention or heart on any issue in life. Yeah, there you go.
Beautifully said, man. I love it. Nick, thank you so much for your time. How can people give a damn and follow along with your work, man?
I appreciate that. So as I've stated, we're 190 episodes in on the Let's Give a Damn podcast. Lots of great stories on there each and every week. You can find that podcast at letsgiveadamn.fm. I'm on social media at Nick Laparra everywhere. And Let's Give a Damn is on social media at Let's Give a Damn everywhere. We've got some exciting things coming up. We're starting a nonprofit fund, which I'm partnering with a ton of amazing individuals on. Just finalized the board advisory and board of directors. It's all women, mostly women of color. And I'm so excited about kind of launching this nonprofit project. We're also pitching a TV show and writing a book. A lot more coming with Let's Give a Damn this year. It's going to be big for Let's Give a Damn. So please follow along. Hit me up on, well, first of all, my email is hello@letsgiveadamn.com. Hit me up there. Would be happy to chat with any of your listeners as much as I can. Obviously to a point with anybody with any questions. And I would love for you to follow along on the journey. Beautiful, man. Well, I do hope that we can continue this discussion at some later date and actually get into some topics and issues and have that back and forth, man. So best wishes to you. I enjoy the show. I enjoy your work. Keep doing it. I think it's needed and necessary. So thanks so much for your time today, man. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Again, I want to reiterate, that's part 1 of a 2-part series on this topic. And I hope you join me next week when I talk with Anthony Shefferly, a police officer, to give the law enforcement side of the bulk of the conversation that Nick and I just had. And I hope that you listen to both conversations with an open mind and with an ear for hearing
the areas of common ground that I think if we sat back and understood those better, we could actually figure out a way forward. So many thanks to Nick Laparra for sharing his story and his experience on the show today. Please do me and Nick a huge favor and share this episode with someone you know who might also find some value in listening to today's conversation. Share this episode with your network. Help spread the good word about the importance of asking more questions. And if you like the conversations with the amazing guests like Nick that I have on the show each and every week, please subscribe wherever you're listening to this episode right now so that you never miss an episode. Subscribing also helps the show gain more reach, and that can certainly help. If you ever want to get in touch with me, you can always email me. It's michael@thefollowupquestion.com, or you can go to thefollowupquestion.com and reach out there, where you can also subscribe to the newsletter. I'll catch you on the next episode of The Follow-Up Question, and until then, keep asking questions.